National history, regardless of where one is taught with a slant towards the accomplishment of the people and the country in general, or to the accomplishment of the political party in charge and how it is upholding the national honors, or to the efforts of a specific ethnic group. It may be told in a way that praises the endeavors of its historical accomplishments to include the antagonistic repeated problems with dominating countries. National history may change the nature of the past to reflect the present. In essence, it's more propaganda which praises the nation, people, dominated political party and individuals. For most, the antithesis of national history is revisional history or changing history to reflect another idea or explanation. Why? Because for most people and the government, to tell history of the nation with actual facts can be dismissive of the past accomplishments, reasons and myths that have been built up to become real facts. It may be used to instill a sense of pride and national feeling of greatness with a desire to set the past wrong with what is perceived as being the truth. British Raj, the period of direct British rule over Indian subcontinent from 1858 until the independence of India and Pakistan in 1947. The Raj succeeded management of the subcontinent by the British East India Company after general distrust and dissatisfaction with company leadership resulted in a widespread mutiny of sepoy troops in 1857, causing the British to reconsider the structure of governance in India. The British government took possession of the company's assets and imposed direct rule. The Raj was intended to increase Indian participation in governance, but the powerlessness of Indians to determine their own future without the consent of the British led to an increasingly adamant national independence movement. India, which was known as the jewel in the crown of the British Empire, was a source of wealth for Britain. Although the Raj's profitability declined the years before independence was finally granted. On the other hand, railways, transport, communication systems were built that helped to knit the previously independent regions of India into a whole, which actually aided the Indian independence struggle under the leadership of Indian National Congress. This movement was led by very class of Indians that the British education system had produced, who read in English literature about the concepts of fair play, justice and about the Mother of Parliaments in Westminster, but observed that the British seemed to leave these values and the practice of democracy at home when they arrived in India. The Raj's policy has been described as one of the divide and rule. This partly refers to the way in which much territory was acquired by playing one Indian ruler against the another, and to the way in which the British stressed what they saw as interactable differences between different regions, communities, arguing that it was only their presence in India that prevented a bloodbath. Britain robbed almost 45 trillion US dollars in India and also led to the death of 1.8 billion Indians that died of deprivation. Britain was also responsible for the death of 35 million Indians. Britain conquered one of the richest countries in the world, which had 27% of GDP in 1700s, and reduced it to, after 2 centuries of looting and exploitation, one of the poorest, most diseased and most illiterate countries on earth by the time they left in 1947. British had a very big colonial regime as compared to other European countries because of a strong naval fleet. They were able to subjugate colonies in almost every habitable continent. So how does British students study about the British Raj? From normal British citizen perspective, the history of India and its independence is very inconsequential and insignificant. The events like World War and other local development which directly affected their life are more important than Indian history. For example, the current scene of globalization and political scenario, people concentrate more on current problems related to their livelihood, like economic slowdown, unemployment, etc. But some of the chauvinist group might still find pride in their previous held large British imperial empire and how they were able to wage atrocities over defenseless population. Most of the school and college going kids study about their history, their culture instead of any of the past colonial tyranny. There are many justifications given for British rule, such as presence of inhuman, barbaric, superstitious practices in India, lack of modern democratic system and governance, status of women and social backwardness, etc. The reforms done by Governor General like William Bentinck, Dalhousie, Warren Hastings, Wellesley Cornwallis and above all Macaulay are glorified and they are depicted as the great reformers of modern India. The civilizing mission of the British Empire and the gift of democracy are often cited as justification for ruling over India. One of the interesting things which are taught in universities of UK is that process of colonizing India is told to be happened by accident because the purpose was merely confined to trading initially, and the company officials were in no mood of ruling over India, hence colonization just happened by accident. Some of the British Oriental historians have a great admiration for Oriental literature, that they even have a provision for granting a scholarship for learning Sanskrit annually today. But on the other hand, we have people like Machiavelli who said a shelf of good European books is better than entire literature of Arabia and India in his famous Minutes. The imperialistic historians give credit for introducing the rule of law, civil services, parliamentary system, governance on modern lights, railways, modern currency system, supreme and high courts, etc. to Britishers. The British Empire is told to be responsible for driving the spiritual, medicine East towards modern materialistic West. Of course, there is great amount of exaggeration in British narrative of the colonization, and so-called civilization mission also had other part of the story. Nevertheless, colonization is thought to be natural and accidental in Britain. The colonial history of Britain is thought as an example of British national pride and of British exceptionalism. The curriculum shows how the British have indeed done great justice to countries they have ruled and actually brought these backward countries into mainstream modern world. I think it's perception which creates history, in which light we see a particular event, person or a group. But there are some instances that cannot be seen in any other light, and British rule in India, or for that matter its colonial past, is its brightest example. And this past should be shown to its present and future such that the future generation can learn a lot from it. Although it is taught in some school but in a very limited way due to its national curriculum, the main reason they don't study imperial history is pretty clear. It's not actually that important to Britain. Teaching history of British colonialism in India isn't as relevant as their own medieval history. For us, colonial period was a huge part of our history, a part that created our national identity in some aspects and shaped our politics. However, the student should be aware of the history, because if you don't know where you have come from, how will you appreciate where you are growing? These are students who are educated through a school history curriculum that focus almost entirely on English political and religious history, with bits of 20th century European history thrown in. These are bits with figures who can easily be cast as evil, such as Hitler or Stalin, for example. The students know very little about Britain's past, let alone British connection with the wider world or history of the world outside Europe. They therefore know particularly nothing about the empire and its legacy, including Britain. The historians they have studied and texts they have read were virtually all about or written by white men, so they know nothing about the history of women or histories of people of color either. This includes those who have played important roles in shaping Britain's past. Bad things, according to Luginton, undoubtedly happened in the name of the empire, but the Britain should be proud of its many legacies, including its role in abolishing the global slave trade. Not to be outdone, but the equally bullish Brexiter Jacob Rees-Mogg trotted out Britain's abolition of the slave trade on Nick Ferrari's LBC show. He also noted that while there were blots on British colonial history, it had some good bits and they were really wonderful. Such responses demonstrate a profound ignorance about British imperial and colonial history, particularly about the impact of the empire on not only the colonized but also the colonizers as well. But it is a state of denial about the empire that makes views like Luginton and Rees-Mogg possible. To say that empire had good bits is to deny the empire entailed, namely the conquest, subjugation and exploitation of millions of people. It is to erase the tremendous structural and symbolic violence that the empire unleashed. To praise Britain's role in abolishing the slave trade is only possible if we deny the various forms of economic, political, social and cultural violence that enabled the perpetuation of such as a trade in Britain and its empire, as well as the ongoing legacies of such forms of violence. To view empire as having good and bad bits almost entails viewing the past in simplistic terms, and to claim students should only study the good bits of the past also begs the question, whose good bits exactly? It also assumes that to teach school children the bad bits is to make them ashamed of their country's past. Yet, as Germany has demonstrated that teaching children to interrogate difficult histories does not make them hate their country. It can serve instead to promote an anti-nationalist nationalism in which The very tenets of nationalist thinking include viewing the past in its nationalistic terms are critiqued. Students being able to interrogate difficult histories such as history of the empire to explore the myriad connection between people in different parts of the world or to study the writings of Indian thinkers has given them much of better understanding of themselves and their place in the world. It will enable them to grow as a person, and that surely is what education is supposed to do. Scholars say that teaching history to kids has many important benefits. History provides us identity. Studying history improves our decision making. We all live in the present and we plan for the future. But how do we understand where we are going and what progress looks like? To know exactly where you are growing, or you need first to understand where you have come from. For that, you need an appreciation of history and judgment to tell history as it is, or it is not history at all.